We are live. Um, Welcome
Wait, that means we're
everybody
not
to the
dead.
stream.
But we're
Do what?
dead. I thought we were dead.
Dead? We're dead?
Yeah, I thought we were dead. You said we're live, but I thought we were dead.
Nope.
Oh, so we must have resurrected. Hmm? Hello? Hello, hello, hello. If you're saying something, I can't hear you.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I keep having some internet issues. I don't know what's going on today. So I've had to cut my camera off so that we can try to get less lag. Um, so today we are going to be discussing polytheism with Calon.
Hello.
So, Callan, if you can take a second and tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what it is exactly that you believe.
Um, well, you see, I believe that Trump is the worst person ever. Well, one of them. Um, Also, Australia doesn't exist. Like, who the hell would believe in Australia? Like, it's just illogical, you know? Am I, by the way, am I being heard or what? Or did
I
we
can
freeze
hear
again?
you. I can hear you.
Okay,
Let's
cool.
check with the live chat.
Alright, sweet. No, alright, so I was kidding. I'm Callan. I tend to float around and stick around in polytheistic circles, and also I play around on Twitter. A lot of fun. I also have the channel Transgarder, where we do trans advocacy stuff and whatnot. And as for my position, well, it's polytheism. I believe that there are multiple gods, multiple entities that you can call gods. Gods, their spirits, all sorts of stuff. They can be nice, they can be mean, they have intention, and yeah, I guess that's a good place to get started. So, yeah. Questions are. Hmm?
Are you still there? All right. I just realized that I have a polytheist on the stream, so we apparently need to sacrifice ram sticks.
Oh, that too.
um, Now we as far as your polytheism goes, and I want to preface this as saying that if anything that I say, I'm going to speak to you to the best way that I know how. So if anywhere I say anything that seems a little disingenuous, it's not to be disrespectful. And please feel free to correct me where I've misspoken because I don't know a whole lot about polytheism.
Okay,
Um,
that's no problem.
so what, I guess, pantheon?
I'm sorry you broke up there. What did you say? Did you ask what pantheon I am? Hello?
Shit for today.
Hello? Oh, I can hear
Hello,
you
can
now.
you?
Yeah, now I
Okay.
can.
Sorry about all these technical difficulties. Um,
It's all good.
what what pantheon do you hold to as far as for worship or veneration or prayer or exactly however it's looked at from your side?
So I tend to be very syncretic in my practice, meaning I will combine gods from a variety of pantheons. Like, I worship Inanna, Sumerian. I also hold to heathenry, the Norse tradition. And also, I have a thing to where I'm honoring the Thunder beings. The Thunder beings are a Cherokee concept where they're pretty much like gods, though kind of like spirits. The line between God and spirit, for me at least, is kind of blurry. But yeah, so I also will sometimes go ahead and honor the Aztec gods as well with Copal. So yeah, hopefully that got through. Hello. Hello. Am I here? Or am I there? I am everywhere. Oh, okay. So this is now my show. I am now taking over this channel. I should probably look at the live chat and watch as they try to viciously rip me apart. I have to pull out the live chat on my phone though. Really, YouTube? Really, you're gonna pull this on me?
Can
Oh,
y'all?
there you are.
Sweet. Can y'all hear me? We're good.
Yeah, I just took over your channel and it's
It's
no
okay.
longer yours.
It's all right.
It's my
Perfect.
channel now.
However you hear. Let's find a way to. Nope, not that one. There you go. We'll do that. We'll give you full layout.
There we go. Yeah. So, welcome to my show. This is where I take control, and JB. Well, you see, the thing was he too was a simulation. So, you know, how's everyone doing? Oh, we have 2 people in the chat. We
This
have
is really.
we have an atheist who is frustrated. Oh, the atheist who is frustrated. I recall him being a huge fan of Armin Navabi. Like the biggest fan of Armin Navabi, right, Russ? Is it you, Russ? I'm not sure if it's you.
It was Russ. It was Russ.
Okay, it was all Russ.
Yeah. All right.
No.
I don't know
That was
what's.
a boring show now, wouldn't it, Russ?
I don't know what's going on. I apologize about all these problems.
It's all good.
So what I was asking was, do you hold to the same deity being in multiple pantheons under different names, or would all of those be separate deities with similar descriptions?
I am holding to them as possibly there are possible deities that will take on multiple descriptions. I have not found any. So I personally hold sort of an agnostic position. Like, for example, I'm pretty sure that the Christian God isn't just one God, if that makes sense, because like you have all these very wild different denominations of different practices of Christianity, and to me it just seems like that the church, whichever spirit or God answers the Mormon church, is not really going to be the same God that it answers the Episcopalian, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. Um, so what are your thoughts on Yahweh? Do you believe Yahweh exists as a God?
I mean, I assume he exists. I've heard people interact with him, and know many people at it that say they've interacted with him, so I presume he's exists.
Do-
I don't engage in personal practice with him,
okay.
so
Um, speaking of on that front, how do your beliefs hold as far as Jesus is concerned? Just as he was an individual, or
he's a guy. He had his own personal gnosis that he was the son of God. People apparently accepted it. Oh, and well, whatever he taught, well, he taught it and was, I guess, crucified, and that was that. I mean, raising to the dead for me isn't exactly like a huge like thing, because it's like, well, many there are ghosts and other spirits, whatnot. During the during I think it's during the Trisena that occurs during August, the veil between the world of the living and the dead is sort of iffy. So it's not really that big of a deal to me, if that makes sense. Um, oh, Russ. But yeah, can the chat hear me? Or I think we're having tech problems again. That's what happens when you have a pagan on, apparently.
I lost all.
I'm gonna pagan around. Pagan.
I am terribly sorry, Calon. I don't know why we're
It's all
having these
good.
issues. Um, so how does your worship practices what do your worship practices involve? Whereas like a normal Christian would just do like prayer or communion. What exactly do your beliefs entail?
My beliefs entail a lot.
Well, as
It,
far as like as far as prayer and worship and
I do pray. I actually pray every morning. Though the symbology is obviously different from, say, a Christian prayer. Um, I also engage in the gifting cycle, which is basically where I will go and give a gift to a god or a spirit. But I don't usually give them to the spirit. It's usually to the gods, I've noticed. And yeah, what those offerings are will depend on a particular god. Which reminds me, I need to get some poke.
what's poke?
Poke is fermented cactus syrup.
Okay.
The particular alcoholic drink from Mexico. Good for offerings, I hear. So, yeah, I need to do that to give thanks and whatnot
Okay.
to the
And
Mesoamerican god.
okay. And probably a big misconception on
Hmm? What's a huge misconception?
There we go. I have no idea what is wrong with this.
Well, only thing to do is to science it. Come here. Yes, I'm poking at you. But Russ, gods are real. They're very real. As are dogs. Yes, that's right. You're a very real dog. Yes, you are. Look how cute you are.
Hello.
So this is again my show. I have taken it over. And welcome to Calon's Hour.
Am I here?
Hmm.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I never believed in the polytheism YouTube curse, but now it's working.
See, atheists believe in curses too.
I didn't until now. I now have enough evidence. It's been shown to me.
All right, let me go pull out my Is it a Bible that you're supposed to use for this proselytization? No, I'm kidding. Anyhow.
So as I was asking you, there's a lot of misconception as to the way that a sacrifice rituals would go. So how would that look as far as within your religion?
I mean, it depends on what sacrifice we're talking about. Like, I don't hunt, so I don't do animal sacrifices, if that's what you mean.
Okay.
Which, by the way, the line between like animal sacrifice and like most people think that people will just sacrifice animals and then just leave the carcass out for whatever reason. People tend to eat their sacrifices, especially in traditions like Hinduism, where you have ideas of prasad and whatnot. But anyhow, that's all aside the point, because I don't do that. And generally, I'll say a prayer, usually in the target language of whatever God's culture I happen to be, whatever culture the God revealed themselves in. It's a cult to pray to them, and then by doing that, I just simply will, depending on whether the deity is Caphonic. If the deity is Caphonic, I will pour out a libation. If not, then I'll usually offer some kopali, which is incense. I actually like the word kopali a lot better than incense. It sounds prettier. But anyhow, so yeah, that's pretty much what it looks like. Also, sometimes followed by meditation.
So as where one of the places where y'all would be different than Christians in this respect would be there's ways that y'all can go from worshiping a deity to no longer worshiping that God. Is that something that's acceptable in polytheism?
Yeah. Sometimes, I mean, the relationship is like mutual. The God sort of responds to you. You respond to the God, and the gift exchange continues as long as both parties, I guess, for whatever reason, have an interest in it. If they don't, then they don't. Same thing with spirits too. Though with spirits, you have to be a little bit more careful, because spirits like Landvetter and Deveger and Alvar are they're more out for their own interests, to put mildly. So yeah, that's the thing. And yeah, you engage in the gifting cycle, or you don't. Some people have particular deities they refuse to work with, even like in heathenry. There's this whole Loki divide where some people will happily engage in practices with Loki. Others will say if there is practice with Loki, then no, I'm out. Which is another thing that's really important is ritual consent. Generally, with rituals, what you want to see is you want to have a list of all the deities that will be honored at a given ritual, and you want people to be aware that you are indeed making offerings and inviting those deities in. That's why in a ritual, you don't just randomly spout out, "Oh, and hail Loki," because now you've basically tied people's essence into, whether they wanted it or not, into Loki's attention. So yeah, that's the whole thing.
Okay. How do so you actually study the languages?
I do. Mm-hmm. Oh, tech. The tech man has issues. Hey, tech man.
Hey, am I here?
Are you there? I don't know. Are you
Am
there
I?
or are you here?
Nope.
Okay, no.
Maybe I'm here and there. Is that possible?
That's possible.
I'm
We call it
omniscient. Is that
Yeah, we call it Schrodinger's tech. It's
sure do
basically
stack?
Yeah, Schrodinger's.
So, as I was asking, you actually try to learn and study the languages of the ancient civilizations that practice worship to these deities, correct?
Yep.
Um, how, I guess at the time, how many languages?
Do I speak? I speak a number of languages. I speak English. That's one. I think. There's also Old Norse, Nawa. Well, some classical Nahuatl. Some Sumerian, and a bunch of other different languages. I've always been one to play around with language. I tend to learn a lot of them, though my spelling sucks in English, because English doesn't spell because of my dyslexia. I mean, dysgraphia. It's the proper term.
And speaking of languages, how do you pronounce your Twitter name?
Let's see.
Is
What is it? Oh, Jornsnadran. That means
yeah,
iron.
that's that's what I thought it was. I was just wanting to make sure.
Yep, Jornsnadran. The Iron Snake, which is just sort of a play on Bjorn Ironside. Instead of Ironside, it's Iron Snake.
Okay. So I don't know. There's so many different directions to go with this because your religions are so much more unknown and so much more open than the other two chats that I've had.
Mm-hmm.
What are misconceptions about your religion that you would like to have cleared up?
I'm not Christian. No, Russ, you can't use facts and logics because I already took the facts and logic. What else? I don't do human sacrifice. I don't do animal sacrifice, for that matter. You do not have to be a member of a particular race or whatnot. You don't even have to have any ancestry in order to work with the Norse tradition. People who do say that you have to have that, well, they're people that can go fuck themselves because they're folkists, and they don't even tend to believe in the gods. They just tend to be LARPing. It's kind of funny because, like, they'll say things like, "Oh, the Vikings were thick-skinned." It's like, well, if you look in the Landnoma book, you'll see like death penalties for like insults and whatnot. It's just like, yeah, very thick-skinned. Religion is also not inherently anti-LGBT. I'm trans myself, gender fluid to be exact, and I've worked it into my theology. And yeah, those are, like, I think the most common misconceptions.
Okay.
Aside
You're
from
talking about the
Christians,
folk.
but
You were you mentioned the focus. Those are the people that you were saying, to my understanding, that you were saying they don't really believe in the gods. They just hold to like ancestral, like pedigree, I guess you could say.
sort of, it's a little more complicated than that. Like, they don't believe like the gods have intentional states and are limited by race, which is a really stupid, arbitrary thing to believe, especially since race doesn't really exist.
Okay. And what's your thoughts on people like Russ who like to call themselves atheopagans who try to Jordan Peterson pagan literature?
I mean, depending on the atheopagan, I don't particularly mind. Like, no. Yes, Russ, I took all the facts and logic. They're all mine now. I possess them all. Okay. Now, when it comes to atheopagans, it really depends on the atheopagan. I tend to be a little bit more, not as, like a lot of polytheists will be guarded around atheopagans because a lot of atheopagans will go, they'll emphasize the atheist part and forget about the pagan part and call, like, our beliefs and whatnot irrational and delusional and all this other nonsense. I'm more flexible in the sense that I've dealt with a lot of atheist Wiccans. It's actually quite a thing, and some various other atheopagans, so I'm generally pretty tolerant of that kind of stuff. But atheopagans do tend to face a little bit of lashback. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. It's not even really lashback. It's more some minor. People are more guarded around atheopagans until, like, they get to know the particular atheopagan. Once they, like, get to know you, then it's like, oh, okay, we're all good. You're not going to try to co-opt everything, beat us down, that kind of stuff.
I've noticed through following you on Twitter that you and a couple other polytheists that I deal with on Twitter are big on allyship with people outside of your religions, be it atheist or Christian or whatever. So would you say that your goal, as far as that goes, isn't to try to bring people to your religious beliefs, but to better the world for the people that are living in it now?
I would say yes. Like, the other thing you also have to keep in mind is how diverse paganism itself is. Like, for example, Aliakai and I practice two totally different traditions. She's a Hellenist. I am a heathen with strong animist, with an emphasis almost on the more animistic parts of it. What that amounts to is basically her tradition is it's not night and day, but it's not. We don't have as many similarities, other aside from being pagan and practicing a European tradition. What was I going to say? What was the question? Oh yeah. When it comes to allyship and whatnot, I tend to let people come to me if they want to be allies, mainly because of all the abuse. But I'm happy for any allies that I can get, especially if they're trans friendly, because at the end of the day, in order to get anything done and to create safe spaces, people need to be on the same page, and they also need to stop being stupid. So that's what I do. Of course, some people like to continue being stupid, and other people are like Russ, who think they have the facts and logic, even though I took them from Russ because Russ was throwing a hissy fit over sharing them. Now then.
Well, that's the frustrated part of his atheism. That's all that is.
Exactly. No, exactly. And sometimes you have to handle the toddlers like they're toddlers, you know? But anyhow, so yeah, allyship is a part of what I do. I help run Allie's stuff. And yeah, I don't. If you come up to me and you ask, okay, hey, I want to get down to the nitty gritty metaphysics of your theology, be like, okay, here's some sources. That's as far as I'll go. But really, the person has to come to the path themselves if they want to practice my religion. Russ, I told you for the 50th time I have the key to your locked cupboard. And Shay, I took those facts and logic so long ago you don't even remember. Okay. Anyhow.
So, I had a train of thought. Oh, there's a certain atheist on Twitter that has been making some crazy comments. Would you,
Oh, you mean the
would you care? Would you care? I don't even remember how to pronounce his name.
Who's advocate? You mean the incel defender? Not the incest defender.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I haven't seen those comments, but that's what I've heard he's done.
Armin Navabi really needs to get over himself and actually sit down and study some moral philosophy. He won't, because it's not profitable, but he needs to. He also is behaving a lot like a toddler, or well, actually more like an edgelord middle schooler. He's basically what Russ pretends to be. Yeah, atheist Twitter is I don't know how the fuck I got involved with that. But hey, apparently I got involved. So, yeah.
You got involved because there's a small group of y'all polytheists that have gotten into our Twitter space because we own Twitter. Right? Twitter is a dumpster fire. We are a dumpster fire. We are Twitter.
Yeah, but I think I'm going to go ahead and steal it and delete it. And then make you pay for it. No, I'm kidding.
I mean, you did at one point in time put a glitch curse on us.
I mean, this whole stream. It's like, you didn't sacrifice to the tech gremlins. You didn't sacrifice enough blood. So, this is what happens. Yes.
I don't know where the ramstick emojis are.
Russ, I've had the originals. But yeah, no, that's like proselytization is not only is it something I don't do, it's something that I consider heavily immoral. in terms of especially when it comes to like native traditions, because it's on par with pretty much genociding a culture. I mean, obviously.
Speak.
Hmm?
Speaking of that kind of stuff, you said that you have some animalist. Is that what it's called?
Animist. Hmm.
Animist. Can you explain that a little bit?
Animism is the idea that everything pretty much has a soul of some form or another. What we eat. I mean, soul, it's like, I don't, like, soul is an interesting term for it, but it's not like the Judeo Christian soul. In fact, there are many different conceptualizations of said soul. The one I tend to adhere to is that basically, trying to think of the best way to phrase it, animancy itself, like movement itself, is pretty much your soul. Like, you are your soul, ontologically speaking. And the parts of you that are alive are what comprise ultimately of your whole soul, your soul body, basically. Some parts of the soul will survive after death, insofar as one can be said to survive after a death. It's kind of an oxymoron, but we understand, I'm assuming we understand that by survive death we mean persistent, in some form of consciousness, some sort of persistence. And at least in my belief system, ultimately there's reincarnation. So, yeah. How that all works is long and complicated.
Well, I guess nobody told you that YouTube is the best place to hash out long and complicated philosophical discussions, did they?
Probably not. Like, it goes back to my ontology, which is basically, like, in the end, there's really only one thing that exists, and that one thing is energy. And that one thing that is energy leads up and basically several different processes, which are also said to exist, come from that energy, and that's what ultimately forms everything. So, yeah, I view individual humans as a process, and because we are a process, that means that ultimately, if a process will end, a process will eventually bounce back and come back. So it's just a matter of time. Death is really, there isn't really like, it's just a change in state, is I guess the best way I could put it, as I see it. You have alive, you have dead. Both are forces that interact. So sometimes we go towards one extreme, other times we go towards another extreme.
So, just for clarification, um, since you believe energy is basically the only thing that exists, that purely exists,
A form
would
of
your
energy.
view, yeah, that's fine. Would you, would the gods also be energy?
Mm-hmm. They are.
Okay.
They are more powerful energies. They're usually, at least as I conceptualize them, they're clusters of various energies. Like, Odin is a wanderer. He also is the bearer of Older, which is, I guess the best translation for it would be a frenzy, but it's like a creative sort of frenzy. But he literally is that force. With Thunor or Thor, lightning is an extension of Thor. It's a literal manifestation of Thor, but Thor also exists as an energy aside from that. Yeah, it has other aspects to him, like things from fertility to protection, those kinds of things, those kinds of energies. Quetzalcoatl is the energy of creation, order, in a way. He's actually a really nice god, in my experience. Whereas Tezcatlipoca is his opposite. Well, opposite really isn't the correct term because it sort of implies contraries, but they're not contraries. In fact, usually there's a whole thing on anemic pairs that I'm still researching and developing myself. But with Smoking Mirror, which is what Tezcatlipoca means, he tends to be disorder and whatnot. So, yeah, there's a whole shtick with that. But yes, in short, the gods are manifestations, or they are ways that energy manifests itself in a conscientious way. That is to say, the gods still have intention. They're just all made of the same substance. Which, because there's only one substance that exists. I'm what you would call a philosophical monist.
Stephen asked a question in the chat, and I kind of want to piggyback off of it a little bit. He wants to know, how did the gods come about, and how did they obtain their personalities? I guess to kind of, because I was going to try to go into that a little bit. There's things with like the Greek pantheon, and I only know this because it was taught to me when I had to learn what is called Greek mythology. That they have views on deities where deities can be born and die.
Mm-hmm.
And so how, I guess in your faith practices, how did your gods get their personalities and the ways that they act? Like, is there something behind that, or is that just how they became? Like, is it like their environment that they're in, or choices that they made as deities?
I guess one way to see it. I mean, there are several ways to see it. For me, because ultimately everything is one, it's sort of how we portion off various aspects of energy, groups of energy that tend to be associated with each other. That is not to say, though, that gods don't have their own personality, but rather, or their own sort of like actions and whatnot, but that the creative forces that are manifested are what we call by like the name Quetzalcoatl. Now, what those creative forces decide to do and whatnot, how they decide to act, is just simply how they are. As for like how they came about, for me, I philosophically hold to that they come about as manifestations of energy. And since energy is that which has always been, then various manifestations, various patterns of them have always come about, gone away, come about, gone away. It's kind of hard to describe it in a way that doesn't take like several hours.
That's fine.
Think of it, it's kind of like weaving in a way. The term that I use, by the way, for these energies is, I'll just go ahead and use it, is teotl. It's actually an Aztec term. This is basically Aztec philosophy, I should mention, or at least one person's interpretation of it. With teotl, it's constantly manifesting itself, but also reforming itself. It's always in motion. And various processes of this motion can be said to be what sort of give birth to the gods, and what can also, I guess, give death to the gods, whatever that necessarily means. Death for a deity isn't, I don't think, would be like necessarily death for a mortal. I think for a deity, what it more is that they split a part of their essence off, and that essence simply becomes something new, like a tree or something. So, yeah. That's
All
like,
right.
because trees are
And
also
then,
processes. They constantly grow, then they die, then they regrow, then they die.
okay. Another question from the chat. If life exists on other planets, would different gods take interest in their civilizations?
Probably. I mean, I don't know. I leave that to the other gods.
Okay, no, that's understandable.
There's a universe full of gods.
You, that's something that, because you can only deal with what's on this planet, you just leave that for the gods to sort out.
Yeah, like, I mean, there are some gods where I'm like, okay, this god's associated with Venus, so this god probably does stuff on Venus. This god probably does stuff on Mercury. What they do? I don't know. I don't live on those. I haven't been to those planets. I mean, we know Russ has, because I sent Russ there in order to and on a totally non-suicidal mission, because he said the wrong thing one day. So yeah, Russ, you can tell us.
And Spartan Theology wants to know, and I'm pretty sure I already know the answer to this question, but just for clarification, he wants to know if people can see the gods.
You can.
I was wrong then. I figured the answer was no.
You can look out in nature, and those are where the gods are, in part. Now, I should clarify, you don't see all the gods, obviously. Nor do you see manifestations of various gods. And you can see them in Ishiptra, which is like part of their essence, which is imbued in a statue. Of course, you destroy the statue, you don't destroy the god, so the essence isn't all of the god, but it is still there. So yeah, the Nahuatl term for a manifestation of a particular divinity is Ishiptra. So yeah, you can see them. Just yeah, I mean, that's it brings back up to mind this whole thing in like Hinduism, where you have these two different philosophies of Murti and Vigraha, where Vigraha, they think, oh, the statue is just simply so that you can concentrate and contact the deity. The deity isn't actually in the said statue, whereas Murti is like, no, part of the deity's essence is in there. And I'm very much on the side of, when you do when you arrange things properly in a way that is somewhat Nelly. Nelly is like basically the term for like proper arrangement and whatnot. You can get a glimpse of the Teotl behind that god, and therefore see that god as that process is ongoing. But yes, sometimes the gods are invisible, sometimes they're not. Really depends.
Oh my gosh, this is a complicated question. Can you expand on the philosophical monism? Does that necessarily mean that change is an illusion, or is there room for some kind of Platonism?
There's no room for Platonism. Platonism assumes things on being. I reject that, and I substitute process. Mine is a process metaphysics, which means that being itself is a process, which means that there is change, and because there is change, that immediately violates one of the tenets of Platonism, which is gods are perfect, because perfect doesn't change. So, putting that aside, my philosophical monism is basically boils down to everything is one sort of substance made out of the same sort of thing. Only one truly countable thing technically exists. Everything else exists as processes of that one thing, like me, you. Some will say it's a form of pantheism. I disagree that it's a form of pantheism, and the reason why is because I don't see theoto, like the thing overall, as having a mind. I see certain aspects of theoto as having mind, but mind is a process of theoto. Theoto overall just simply manifests itself as it does, according to sometimes various laws, be they physical, metaphysical, or whatever. So I hope that answers the question.
All right. Is it Transgarter? Wants to know if the same gods can go by many different names, which is something that we kind of discussed a little bit earlier.
Shay, like, I think that certain gods do go by different names. Like, I think that the processes involved, I think that there are different processes involved with the Christian gods. Like, I don't think the god of Mormonism is the same god as the Episcopalians, or that the god of Celtic Christianity is the same as the god of Jehovah's Witnesses. So, I think it's possible, but I don't generally tend to claim that or label it unless I have a very specific reason to. Like, I still will separate Wodan and Olden, for example. Is there a music god? Yes, there are plenty of music gods across many different traditions. Apollon for Greek. Bragi for Norse. Well, Bragi sort of. Yeah, I would actually stick with Bragi for that. He's actually a human who became a god. From what we can tell. Just to be clear,
That's
there's
interesting.
no for the gods.
I didn't fully understand this question, so I put it up in hopes that you could.
It depends on which tradition we're talking about that I practice. Like, if we're going Norse, if I'm talking to you about Norse tradition, then there is an origin story of shorts. I, however, interpret it a little bit differently than most people do. As for gods coming from other gods, that's a thing that can happen. Like, just like a process can give rise to sub processes, so on and so on. So, is there one creation story that I adhere to? No. I see symbolism and use in pretty much all of them, now that I think about it. But, like, for example, I take the death of Ymir in Norse, and I see that as pretty much the creation of this universe, in a way, because it's a great sacrifice.
Okay. And another question for you.
If someone does, how do they interact with us, anyways? Well, what was the last part of that question?
Oh, sorry. I'll put it right back up.
How can we optimize their existence? I don't know what that means, to optimize their existence. Oh, you mean to see their existence? Well, you could pretty much make, like, if you want to see their existence, you can just go outside, feel the wind. The wind is Eikato, or who is an aspect of Quetzalcoatl. You go outside, you go to, like, or you go to a graveyard, you honor your ancestors, you are then dealing with death gods. There are a number of ways to interact with the gods, like, numerous, come to think of it. Even having sex can be an interaction with a deity. There are sex gods. Inanna is one of such. Optimize our lives by their existence. I mean, optimize is a tricky word here, because different people have different ideas of what that means. Like, if I want to optimize my own life, well, that's going to mean something different than the guy who's happy being perfectly content working at a grocery store, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I just enjoy doing research and learning a lot more. So to me, optimizing my life is a life of learning. Whereas for that other person, it's a life of, oh, okay, work this job, get this money, spend it on whatever luxuries I want, so on and so forth. So yeah, it's a little bit of a I guess the best I can say is that to optimize here, I guess means you just pick a god that you vibe with and go with the gifting cycle and whatnot. So yeah, not really an answer, but that's how I interpret that question.
Example. Oh, here we go. Well, we're not killing anybody, Stephen.
Gods generally don't care if you believe or not. Gods give gifts and whatnot. Heck, they're responsible for my coming to be here today. I have my own patron god who oversaw my birth. So when you talk about gifts, like divine gifts, they tend to interact sometimes through indirect means. Sometimes it can be direct, like, oh hey, I needed that. I was wondering where that stick was. Oh wait, that stick just happened to fall from a tree. Now I can take this and make a shelf from it or something like that. Well, actually, in my case, it was a coat hanger, but still, the gods do what they want. If they want to optimize whatever, then they will optimize it. If they don't, then they don't.
Can I I'm gonna try to put this into a description, and please explain to me where I'm wrong or tell me I'm completely wrong about all of it. But is it basically a concept like where the gods exist and the gods can interact if they want to into your life, and then you show them, you give them some kind of worship or whatever because they have done certain things for you? Not that they're not praised because they are gods and because they are more powerful, but they are praised for who they are and what they've done. Is
that works for some traditions and not others. Like in my tradition, my own personal tradition, it's a mixture of I guess sort of both in a way. Like I will honor both because one, they're a god, but two, also because of what they have given me, which is life. Let's see. Oh, okay. That's just people fighting in the chat.
yeah, Sam's trying to educate Stephen, which is fine. Stephen's a good guy. He's a Christian, but he's a good guy overall.
Okay, cool. But yeah, no, the gods they don't generally particularly care if you worship them or not. They're just like,
And this gentleman would like to know about your morals in about 2 sentences or less.
Okay. There is objective morality. I don't ground it in deity, though. Objective morality is based off of human flourishing, and human flourishing is objectively determined by how a human functions within a given society. So, for example, if you come home every night and you're just a drunken bastard and hit people and whatnot, obviously you're not functioning very well, and so therefore you are behaving immorally. Which means that immorality is a behavior that more affects you than it affects other people. But it can also affect But also, so it can, but and this is like, it can also affect other people, obviously, where you see people like Ted Bundy who behave grievously immoral by killing people. And it's immoral on the grounds of, obviously, that creates chaos and disaster and whatnot. So, yes, there's objective morality. No, it's not grounded in deity, as far as I'm concerned. You will get some polytheists who will argue that it's objective, that it can be grounded in deity. I don't particularly understand. Well, I kind of understand their arguments, but I don't like them. To me, they're unsound.
All right, and Russ had a question for you. He wants to know if the gods make his foot itch.
They're about to make his foot burst out and boil, so he better get some cream. Just saying.
There's your answer, Russ. There we go. In some traditions, there was pretty special gifts given in a more direct way, very involved in human life. This view seems to be less interactive in big gifts.
I mean, it depends on what you mean by big gift. I consider life to be a pretty big gift. Like,
I replied to him and said, I replied and said, "What do you mean by big gifts?" And I'm kind of waiting to
if you mean like a
get a little
magic
bit more on
hammer
that.
or something like that, hammer. I'm an animist, so tools technically have their own souls, and they will cooperate with you on various things and whatnot.
Does Thor have a hammer?
Some traditions he has a hammer, other traditions he has an axe. Really depends on which way you want to view it. It was likely originally in an axe, but axe, hammer. The whole point is Mjolnir.
Yeah, so Mjolnir has its own soul.
I don't believe. Well, the thing is that Mjolnir. So Mjolnir itself represents its own sort of process that Thor can wield. It doesn't represent its own literal There's no literal Thor sort of hammering out lightning bolts, if that makes sense. That's a personific. That's not a personification. Goddamn. That's a way that we humans can relate to Thor, if that makes sense.
Okay. Any more questions? I don't have a big audience, Calon. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's all good. It takes time to grow. I understand that, definitely.
This is my third stream, my third actual stream. I did a couple of test streams, and this is my third actual stream with somebody else.
Well, I'm glad it's working as well as it is right now. I remember my third stream. That was a nightmare to get set up.
Well, see, that's the difference. See, you have to deal with the technology curse from the pagans, whereas I didn't have to deal with it until I brought one on the channel.
I mean, eventually we just hit it enough with the hammer and it worked. Hi, dog. Yay, metaphysics. The foot gremlins. Of course, that's why it can always come back. Great discussion so far. How would you determine if flourishing of individual groups or the entire species is the most important? So the quickest answer I can give in terms of morality is that you would actually probably benefit more by working with the other tribe instead of stealing the food. There isn't really a case where stealing the food is optimal. So
Okay,
yeah.
we're back on the Calon stream for a little bit.
Oh, hi. Yeah. I've gotten here too late, so I
Hi.
don't know if Calon's
So
gone over this, but did she have a first deity she felt drawn to? That's a good question. I guess Inanna, but see, the thing is, I've always been pagan. I was a Wiccan before, so I guess you would say the goddess or whatnot, or the goddess and the god of Wicca. But I gradually fell away from Wicca, so yeah.
okay, I think Stephen Steen is coming back to his thing earlier for big gifts. Where would your traditions fall on demigods?
They can be a thing. I don't see why they can't. Couldn't be. They're just they're very powerful animistic souls. Whether they walk around or whatnot.
And Ross wants to know how you determine if flourishing of individuals, groups, or the entire species is the most important. I always think that's a bad question.
Well, to answer that question in as brief a way as I can, the best I'm going to be able to tell you is look up a book called On Virtue. Forget who wrote it. I think it was Rosalind. And that will outline virtue ethics for you, which is in essence where I come from, where I'm coming from. I mean, I don't know if you can hear me, but the gods are very interactive, so I don't necessarily know what you mean by that. Like, just some spirits and gods interact, others don't. Like, Namu is pretty much, from what I can tell, just fucked off to wherever she wants to go. So, yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna do a quick last call for questions, and then I'm probably gonna shut it down because the tech gremlins have decided to come back and start messing with us again.
Yeah, it happens. That's why you have to make blood sacrifices beforehand.
Well, you didn't tell me the rules.
All right, well, now you know the rules. Now you can go and perform the blood sacrifice.
You knew I was an atheist before you came in here, so you know that I don't know the rules of blood sacrifices.
Oh, just a little pinprick. That's all it takes. No, I'm kidding. All right. All right. So yeah, last call for questions. This might be a little
Frustrated.
obscure, but how do you see Landvetter? I see them as in the land. I see them manifested in the plants and whatnot. They are basically the collective consciousness of the fauna around you. And yeah, that's how I see them.
And for those of us that are not entrenched in these traditions, can you explain to us what that is?
So usually, I think the quickest way for me to explain it is panpsychism. The idea that pretty much everything sort of has somewhat of a mind or some sort of processes. Basically, that consciousness can emerge in a variety of different ways from various subatomic particles because, we're here. We presumably have this thing called consciousness. So it doesn't make that much sense to say that, well, okay, another thing that's living or growing can't also have a different form of consciousness. Does that make sense? Probably not.
I said, yeah, I'm sorry if you didn't hear me.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's basically based on the principle of saying, well, okay, if we're going to say that we're the only ones who have consciousness, well, that's kind of special pleading. So yeah.
All right. Well, I don't think we're going to have any more questions. So I guess we'll go ahead and shut it down. We've been going for about an hour and 10 minutes. You've been going for about an hour and 10 minutes. I've been going for less than that because my system keeps shutting down for some reason.
Tech gremlins, that's why you have to sacrifice your blood to them. It has to be cis blood. Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and let you give us a chance to tell us where everybody can find you and what you've got going on before we head out of here.
You can find me in the deepest pits of. I'm kidding. You can find me. Well, one, you can find me on Transgarther, which is actually a stream I'll be doing right after this with my lovely co-host Shay. And you can also find me on Twitter at Autospread. And JB follows me, so you can also find me through him. So yeah, that's where you can find me. And you should be in some sort of fight, but still.
I did link your Twitter into the description of the video. Did not have your channel, but I will go get it and get it linked to the
video. All right, awesome. And I'll be sure to, I guess, spread this video around. But yeah. Hope I answered all the questions.
I'm gonna. Yeah, from the handful of people that we got watching, but I'm go ahead and
demand that I demonstrate everything.
He won't.
I'm just Russ. Come on, Russ. You need to. I'm kidding. I know.
See, I'll show you what I said to him. He said he's the most interactive god of bacon you will ever see. So I commented back. I said, you're a rock, not a god of bacon.
Exactly. Atheists are rocks. It's really weird.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end this stream. It's not going to kick you out. You'll still be in for a second. So thanks, everybody, for coming and joining the stream. Comment any questions below, and we'll try to get to them. And thanks for coming by.